Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a 2,000-year-old story about a lost child that, believe it or not, gives us a really practical blueprint for parenting in the modern world. So let's get right into it. It's a great question, right? We're going to break down how the story of a young Jesus being found in the temple actually provides this surprisingly detailed framework for character, and one that feels incredibly relevant even today. So, let's paint a picture here. Imagine the absolute chaos of a massive festival in ancient Jerusalem. You've got Mary and Joseph heading home with this huge group of family and friends, and they just assume their son, Jesus, is somewhere in the crowd, probably messing around with other kids. Only he's not. This timeline just lets you feel the growing dread. Day 1, it's all fine, just a simple assumption, but by day 2, that turns into pure panic. They realize he's actually gone, and they race back to the city. It takes them 3 whole days of frantic searching before they find him. And where they find him is probably the last place they expected. Yeah, so instead of finding a scared, lost kid, they walk in and see their 12-year-old son sitting in the middle of this deep theological debate with the most respected teachers in the entire city. And these scholars are just blown away by his insights. You've got this wild contrast between his parents' frantic fear and his own deep, profound calm. But here's the twist. The sermon we're breaking down here argues that the most important lesson isn't what Jesus was doing in the temple, but what he did after his parents found him. It all came down to a simple, powerful action. He just went home with them. And that single act of obedience, well, that's the foundation for everything else. So the sermon really centers on this one Gujarati word, adin. Now, this concept goes way deeper than just doing what you're told. To be adin means to be submissive in a respectful way, to actually listen with your full attention, and to genuinely honor the authority of your parents. This is presented as the foundational quality of a good child. And this is where the difference becomes crystal clear. An adin child is one who listens, who helps out, and who makes their parents proud. The opposite, of course, is a child who's always arguing back, asking, "Who are you to tell me what to do?" The pastor even makes an analogy to pets, pointing out that, we naturally appreciate pets that listen to us and are obedient. All right, so starting from that one core idea of being adin, the sermon then builds out an entire framework. It actually identifies 6 more specific qualities that are said to flow directly from this foundational virtue of obedience. Let's walk through these really quick. First, this kind of obedience makes parents proud. Simple enough. Second, it's about listening to both parents, not playing one against the other. Third, a child who listens is seen as wise, right? But one who doesn't is seen as foolish. And fourth, they follow their parents' lead without a fight, just accepting the family's circumstances as they are.
Okay, now here is a really provocative point from the sermon. The pastor argues that a super common mistake we make as modern parents is giving our kids too many choices, even with something as simple as asking, "So, what do you want to eat?" He suggests this actually creates a bad habit because it undermines the virtue of just accepting what's provided. The core idea is that obedience and acceptance have to be actively taught.
And this ties back to that bigger idea, using Jesus as the model for accepting his life as the son of a carpenter. He didn't question his lot in life. He didn't wish he was born into a wealthier family. The virtue being taught here is to accept your family's situation, whatever it may be, with grace and without complaining. All right, so we've covered all these internal virtues that start with obedience, but how does this actually translate to the outside world? Well, the final piece of this framework is all about what it means to be a good person within your community. This 7th and final quality is all about balance. A truly good person in this view grows in favor not just with God, but with people too. This isn't about, becoming a hermit and hiding away in a cave. It's about living right in the middle of society, interacting with people and earning their respect through your actions. So the bottom line here is that goodness isn't something you do in isolation. The ultimate goal is to live a life that is both spiritually grounded and socially beneficial, to be a positive force in your family, your neighborhood, and your whole community. So let's pull all of these threads together. What does this ancient story, filtered through this sermon, really offer as a guide for parents trying to raise kids in the complicated world we live in today? Well, it gives us a clear 7-point blueprint. It all kicks off with that foundational idea of being adin, or respectfully obedient. And from there, it builds a whole path towards wisdom, acceptance, and being a good member of society. And what's the end goal of all this? It's to raise a child who isn't just obedient, but who is also wise, respected, and most importantly, happy. The pastor even mentioned that the name of a child being celebrated at the time, Asher, actually means happy. The message is that this path of virtue is also the path to real joy. And that leaves us with one final thing to think about. This whole framework puts a huge emphasis on obedience and respecting authority. So the real challenge for parents today is this. How do you instill these incredible virtues while also nurturing the critical thinking, the creativity, and the independence our kids absolutely need to thrive in today's world? It's a fascinating question. Thanks for joining us.